Hello viewers, today I'm going to be going over some of my recommendations for phones if you are just getting started with your Asterisk setup. So for Asterisk, if you're using free PBX especially, I would recommend these phones if you're using, especially if you're using free PBX. You can use them with Asterisk, but you have to manually set up a config file for them and everything, and stuff like that in the Digium Phones module, and you have to get them registered, and you have to get the Digium Phones module and actually register it, which can be a pain. So it took me a while to actually get that working. However, with free PBX, especially if you install it using the install script, it automatically installs Endpoint Manager, and you can manage these for free. You don't have to get the full license for Endpoint Manager. So anyway, I have this D65 and this D40, and I also have another D65, but that's upstairs. And these just discover the Asterisk unit, the server, using Bonjour, MDNS, whatever you want to call it. And they should just pair right up. Moving on to the second category are devices that are the third-party devices. So phones such as this MPP phone. Let me get this D65 out of the way. This Cisco 8845 MPP. This Cisco SPA 525G, as you can see here. And what else? And my Yealink phones. Those all I've had okay experience with the phones. And all the phones I've shown up to this point will work with things like paging and intercom. So they'll actually auto answer and stuff. One of these will not. The other one that I have that is web configurable is this Polycom VVX 600 or 601, and this does lack some features like auto answer on page, because I think they use a proprietary paging format or something. I don't know, but anyway, there's that. Now we're going to move on to the phones that are a little bit harder to config. You need things like a TFTP server and some files to config them, but you can still configure them over the web if you want to. So I have my Astra 6867i, 68 or 6920 over there. I have a 6940. So this 6867i, there are things you cannot configure on the phone itself on the web config page. I also have, by the way, I also have this 5320, and the 5360 is sitting over there face down. So there's some things on the phone that you can't configure on the web page, like inactive backlight brightness. That was something that I've had to figure out how to do. However, the administration, if you go to my GitHub, the administration files and stuff for it, the administration guide and stuff is included with the firmware for this. That firmware may not be the newest because I had to pull it off the Internet Archive because Mitel took down the firmware. But for these, you shouldn't have to do a firmware upgrade. For these, the Mitel 6900 series, if they're on the MyNet firmware, you're going to have to convert them to the SIP firmware if you want to use them on Asterisk. And you're going to also have to put in a little config blurb allowing it to connect to third-party servers or whatever, third-party call control. However, something I really like about these is the config file, like the parameter setting and everything. Very easy to do on these. It's kind of just plain English, basically, kind of. I don't know, you'd have to look at the config guide. But I find it much easier than some of the other phones I have. For example, this Mitel 5320. So first of all, to get the web config utility, you have to get you have to have a certain firmware level. This one's running the 2021 firmware. I can boot it up and show that quickly in a moment. So I'm going to boot it up here and we can see what firmware it's running that I updated it to. And I also have those files up on my GitHub, as well as I think on the Internet Archive. So this is 6506 or 6516 is the version number. Plug this other phone back in. But then there's other versions online that you can download and get access to it. And then you have to have the mn_generic file, which will turn on the web page. And that's also on my GitHub. I don't have the full configuration sample for this, because I haven't had time to go through and edit it and, like, comment what needs to be changed in order for it to work. But these also, once they're connected, they also work with paging and intercom. However, these Astra and these Astra style phones will mute the mic when they go off hook on intercom and page. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but just a thing to keep in mind. But these ones will also work with intercom and page. So now let's move on to the difficult ones. The ones that if you have the time, can try to mess with, but otherwise, if you just want a basic system to work and you don't want to have to do too much work with it, maybe avoid these. All right. I'll move some of this out of the way. All right, so right here, these are kind of the ones that are kind of going to be difficult for you. So all these phones right here are Cisco IP phones. We'll also this one, and we'll talk about this one in a second. These are all Cisco IP phones running enterprise firmware. Now, first off, with these, if you want to use these with SIP, you have to convert them to the SIP firmware. Sometimes it can be difficult finding the SIP firmware for these, and some of these don't have SIP firmware available for them. But the 7900 series, some of it does, some of it doesn't. It all really depends. Kind of same thing applies for the 6900 series as well. This one, when I got it, came with SCCP firmware. We're going to talk about this one in a second. All these require TFTP servers, a TFTP server, and they all require to be configured entirely from their config files. You can't really configure anything on them directly. And they also need a bunch of other supporting files as well, like ringtone files, because they only have 2 ringtones, or in some cases 3 ringtones on them by default. So up here I have an 8851, a 9951, and a 7861, as well as the 7975 over there. But yeah, unless you have the time and the patience to configure these, I'd say maybe stay away from these ones, at least when you're getting started with them, because now there is very good documentation online for these, but sometimes these can be picky, at least in my experience. These I had to use a different config file than the one I'd been using for this phone and this style of phone and this style of phone. I also had to use it on this as well. But you have to have a TFTP server, and they have to be able to pull down. And something I should have mentioned with the Mitel 5300 series, it would be beneficial to be able to set DHCP options on your DHCP server. If you have just a basic router, you're not going to be able to do that. I fortunately have a Windows DHCP server, so I can do a bunch of that stuff, but with just like a basic, like at least with like a Netgear router or whatever, the one that like a home router, you're not going to be able to set that information. Also, even, and these ones specifically don't use a standard well, they can use a standard option, but they prefer to use option 150, and that's not usually predefined in the DHCP. So at least with Windows, I don't know about anything else. But so yeah, you have to figure out how to define that option, and then once you do that, you can provision these. It's a process. I mean, you can use these without DHCP server config, but you have to manually do it on every phone. You have to go to the phone, actually put in the alternate TFTP file, and these things lack a few things. They don't really support paging, at least not in my config, or intercom. They are able to make calls. They actually do. The video does work on these, somewhat. It's sometimes a little bit strange how it works, but it does work. And then there are things you have to go through the config file and actually enable and stuff. But and things like conference don't work. Transfer button does work, and with these, there's a weird bug where, like, if I put a call on hold with these, especially with these phones, the video phones especially, if I put a call on hold, like after like 30 seconds or so, it'll drop the call, which is strange. It doesn't do it on the non-video phones. It only does it on the video phone. So I don't know if like there's like a negotiation failure thing or something. I don't know. But in that case, you can just park the call. But, and also with these want a like messages application, and I don't have that set up because I don't have CUCM. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, I also do have a Nortel i2004. That one really depends. You have to configure it through Asterisk directly. You have to make sure Chan Unistim is loaded and enabled. I don't know. There's a process. I think I showed it in a video how you have to do it. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you liked this video, and maybe would like to see, I don't know. Still struggle a little bit with this outro thing, but if you like what you see, leave a like. Have any questions about this, leave comments, and I'll try my best to answer it. Not an expert on this stuff, kind of just experimenting with it. I have more videos kind of like this. I try to do some gaming stuff, but recently I've been really busy, so it's kind of been hard to do that stuff. I've done some other weird things, but if you would like to check those out, you can do that by clicking on my channel. If you like what I produce, maybe consider subscribing. On some of my other videos, there are affiliate links. If you would like to check those out, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and have a good day.